Yeah, okay, so the last session of this workshop is a bit special because we're having a slightly more advanced topic. Everything up to now was, I mean, could be considered as undergraduate mathematics, although some undergraduates may have had difficulties in recognizing topology or calculus, but in the way we do them in Mathlib. But this last talk is about differential geometry. So, of course, you should feel free to continue working on more elementary stuff, but I encourage everybody to attend this lecture and try to do the exercises. So I think Sebastian will do the talking, but then Heather will help in a breakout room because we need rather specialized tutors in the breakout room. And I'm ashamed to say that I haven't engaged yet enough with a differential geometry in Mathlib to be able to help much here. So Sebastian is working in Nantes, and I don't really know if I can say what he's working on. Officially, he's probably doing dynamical system, but he's also working in probability theory and geometric group theory at least. And Heather is in New York working on differential geometry, Kähler geometry. And yeah, let's have fun with differential geometry.
Okay, let me start. I guess you're all used to it, but you should git pull to get the last version of the exercises because they have been updated maybe 20 minutes ago. So this talk will be a little bit different from the previous ones because, as Patrick said, manifolds are maybe a little bit more advanced topic than continuous functions on topological spaces, say. And in particular, if you take 3 different books on differential geometry and you look at the definitions of a manifold in these 3 books, typically there will be you will get 3 different definitions because you have a lot of details that you can choose for when you have a ring. Everyone will agree that about what is a ring. You can ask whether there is a 1 or not, and whether 1 is allowed to be equal to 0 or not. But for manifolds, which are supposed to be the abstraction of smooth spaces, you have a much bigger design space. For instance, here I have highlighted a few things that you could allow or not. For instance, do you allow the field to be just real numbers or real or complex numbers, or do you allow something else than real or complex numbers? Another thing is, do you allow only finite dimensional spaces, or do you allow model spaces that could be infinite dimensional? These 2 are pretty mild, I think, because you can write definitions in as large generality as you want, and then you can specialize. So 1 and 2 are not too controversial. You could do it in the largest possible generality. Then the 3rd one is more controversial. Do you allow boundaries in your manifolds? And the 4th one may be even more controversial. When you have a manifold, should you have a single model space that should be a model around every point in your space, or do you allow different spaces at different points? For instance, do you allow manifolds that are not of the same dimension around every point or not? And so, depending on the books, different choices are made. For instance, I think that Bourbaki allows only R or C, but allows infinite dimension and allows model spaces depending on the point. And in Lean, in Mathlib currently, the choice is that we allow fields, arbitrary fields, because it doesn't make any difference in the formalization. We allow infinite dimension because it doesn't make any difference. And then if you want in theorem statements, you can add the assumption that you are finite dimensional if it makes a difference. And also we allow boundaries. And allowing boundaries makes things much more painful at some points. But the thing is that the goal is to provide a language to be able to speak about a lot of interesting theorems. And it turned out that manifolds with boundaries are everywhere in the literature, and you have a lot of statements that are expressed in this language. So if the goal is to provide a language to be able to state a lot of mathematical theorem in this language, I think you have to allow boundaries. Bourbaki did not allow boundaries because they wanted some very clean theory, but sometimes you have to allow messy stuff because it's really helpful. Okay, so I try to say that what is important to me is the language. I mean, when you're speaking about manifold, you have a whole language that makes it possible to state theorems. Let me just give a few examples. Here I have written down one version of the famous Perelman-Thurston geometrization theorem that tells you that you have a structure theorem for any compact connected string manifold. It can be cut into you cut along tori and you get elementary pieces, and these pieces should have some geometric structure that can be modeled on some space among 8 spaces, and this description is just local, but when you change locally coordinates, the change of coordinates should belong to a nice Lie group acting on the model space. And this theorem is really an important theorem. I think everyone agrees about that. So it would be nice to be able to say that in Lean. And for this, allowing boundaries really helps. But as Patrick said, I'm not a differential geometer. I'm more in the field of dynamical systems. And in dynamics, a typical theorem would start like that. You take a compact manifold M, and then you look at the map F from M to M, and then you assume that this map had this or this property, and then you can start asking questions about the map. The manifold here is just in the background. But if you don't have the manifold in the background, you cannot even state the theorem of the questions. Or here is another typical statement that is nice to look at. You take a hyperbolic surface of unit G, you take a random geodesic of length T, and you can ask how many times this geodesic does self-intersect itself. Again, manifolds are not really the main object here, they're just the background. But if you want to state all these theorems and many other interesting theorems, you need to be able to talk about manifolds. And so this was my motivation to start formalizing manifold in Lean. It's a little bit related to the formal abstract projects. You need to have the language to be able to state the theorems, even if you're not yet able to prove the theorems. So what is currently the state of things in Lean? Manifolds in Lean are really just in their infancy, but we're still able to state some stuff. And stuff are stated like that. For a manifold in mathematics, you have space, you have a bunch of charts going from this space to your model vector space, and you will ask that the change of coordinates between charts is a smooth map. And in Lean, this piece of mathematical knowledge has been broken into 2 or 3 independent parts. And the first part is the atlas. So the set of charts, you have your space that you want to turn into a manifold, and then you have the model space. Think of a vector space or half space if you're speaking manifold with boundary. And then the charted space structure will just be the set of charts from your manifold to your model space. This is data, and it will be fixed once and for all. And it's a type class, so it's associated to, you have your space M, your model space H, and when you have fixed M and H, you will just have one atlas fixed once and for all. For instance, if you look here at what is a charted space, okay, here you have 2 things. You have the model space, which is a Euclidean half space of dimension 1, just a half line. And then you have the closed interval 0, 1 in R. So this statement, charted space, Euclidean half space 1 and closed interval, is just telling you, it's just asking for a set of charts from the closed interval to the half line. So that's what you can see here. Okay, I have a problem with Zoom. Okay.
And that's okay, Sebastian. We see that part of it.
Yes, but I don't. So I need to move. Okay, I'm fine. So you see that this assertion that you have a charted space is just a type. It's data. And then in this case, this is already built in Lean. In MATLib, we have already constructed the charter space structure on the interval 0, 1. So it's manifold with boundary structure. So it's already there. And this stuff, the charter space, is just the set of charts that should cover the space. And you have no data that the change of coordinates are smooth or whatever. And that's the second piece that we have for manifold in MATLib. It's a compatibility condition. So change of coordinates should behave nicely. They should behave to some subgroup or subgroupoid of the group of local homeos of the model space. For instance, when you're speaking of a smooth manifold, you're requiring that the change of coordinates should be smooth maps of the model vector space. And we don't register this only for smooth maps, but for any nice groupoid of local homeomorphisms on the model space. For instance, if you want to talk of topological manifold, you can do this, and the groupoid would just be all local homeomorphisms of the model space. If you want to talk of a C1 manifold, you can do this, and you would just change the groupoid, or C infinity, or analytic. Changing the groupoid changes the smooth structure of your space, or gives more or less information on the smooth structure of your space. So here, the charted space, the charts are fixed, and having a groupoid is a proposition. It tells you that whenever you change charts, you belong to this groupoid. So you can see here that this assertion that you have a groupoid, it's just a proposition. So here, what I've written is that the interval 0, 1, which is a model space, which is a manifold over the model space, which is a half-line, it has a groupoid of smooth maps on the half-line. And here you have a really strange name that you're not supposed to understand now, and I will come back a bit to it in 1 second. And again, this is already in MATLib, so it's a type class, and MATLib knows about this type class. Sorry. So it's already there. And since this name is really ugly, maybe you don't want to remember it, and you just want to say, okay, most of the time I will talk about smooth manifold, so I don't want to talk about this groupoid of smooth function and so on. So there's a shortcut notation for this, which is just smooth manifold with corners. And again, since it's just an abbreviation for the previous line, again, it's already known in MATLib. So why is this weird stuff here? The smooth groupoid of, so infinity is just the order of smoothness. So maps are infinity smooth. And then you have this weird R delta of 1. And it just means that when you're talking about a smooth structure, if you're on the vector space, you know what to do, you're fine. But here, I'm talking about a manifold with boundary. So I'm in a half space. And so to talk about smooth functions in a way that covers uniformly the case of manifold with boundary as manifold without boundary, you should think that you have two spaces, the half space, H, the full space, E, and then an embedding of the half space in the full space. And then when you have an embedding like that, you can say that functions on H are smooth if when you read them through I, they are smooth in the usual sense in the vector space. And so that's what we call a model with corners. And for instance, if I just the identity and H is equal to E, it's just the usual situations of smooth maps on the vector space. But you want to have this more general setting to be able to talk about more general situations. Of course, when I write smooth manifold with corners, you don't need to have corners, but you may have corners or boundary or whatever. So that's the general structure of manifold in MATLib. And I would like to emphasize that this is general enough to cover a lot of interesting situations. For instance, in Perelman geometrization theorem, I say that the basic pieces, they should be modeled on a model geometry with changes of coordinates given locally by the action of a Lie group. It would really fit into this framework where you would have a charter space structure where the model space would not be a vector space or a half space, but it would be this model space of Thurston and asking that the changes of coordinates are nice, they belong to this Lie group, you can write that down in this language.
So you can do SL2 of the p-adic numbers. That's
You could do SL2 of the p-adic numbers, yeah, no problem at all. Except that, well, maybe manifold in the usual sense with p-adic numbers are not that nice, and you would like to go to Berkovich spaces or whatever. But at least with this kind of definition, you could speak of p-adic numbers. And then one point I would like to stress is that with this point of view, the charts are fixed once and for all. And you can ask if they are nice with respect to such or such groupoid. In many books, often we consider the maximal atlas for some smoothness class. And okay, we have that. It's called the maximal atlas for here. The groupoid is here, and manifold is here. So you can speak of a maximal atlas and equivalence classes of atlas or whatever, but in practice, it's not needed often. Okay, so all this was a lot of hand waving, and maybe we should try to look at a real example to see what we would need to know if we wanted to put, say, a smooth manifold structure on the sphere. So of course, the sphere of radius 1 in R3, you don't want to put a smooth manifold structure by hand. You don't want to construct a chart by hand. You want to see it's a level for a smooth function, and you have this smooth function is a summation, so you have a submanifold and you get the atlas for free. We don't have submanifold yet. It's coming in the near future, but it's not here yet. But we will try to do it by hand. So let me just define the sphere in Rn at the sphere, but as a type. So here you have a type, and I register the question from this type to the Euclidean space because I will need just a little bit below. And then what do you need if you want to construct on this space the sphere in Rn+1? So the sphere of n-dimensional, you want to construct a manifold structure modeled on Rn, which is the Euclidean space phi n. That's what it means. So what you need 4 pieces of data. You need the atlas. What is an atlas? An atlas is just a set of local homeomorphisms from your sphere to the Euclidean space. So that's what you expect. And then you have some conditions on your atlas. The atlas should cover everything. That is for each point in the sphere. You should have a chart at this point, which will be called chart at x. And this chart should be, okay. Here, what is written is that for all point x in the sphere, the chart at x should be in the atlas. Since I've sorted everything, it's not obvious what that means. And then also you want the chart at x to be defined around x. And that's what is written here. For all x, x should be in the source of the local homeomorphism chart at x. So that's just a strange way of saying that the elements of my atlas cover the whole space, but it's a convenient way to say this, and we will see that later. Why? Okay, so now assume that you have filled all the stories here. I won't do that, but still Lynn will be very happy with the solid fields and will be able to work through and talk about smooth functions on the sphere and so on. So once you have constructed this data, you want to say that, okay, I have this data and the chain of coordinates are smooth. So you want to say that the sphere, yes?
Can I clarify something? Do you intend that people fill in those stories during the exercises session?
No, okay. Here I'm it's not the exercise session, so I've written a warning here. There are stories in this section, you're not supposed to fill them in. You will have plenty of stories to fill, not these ones, okay? I wouldn't be able to fill them either by hand. I really want to do it by more general technology, but here it's really just to see what's inside a charter space structure. And then if you want to say that this charter space structure is smooth, you have a condition which is called compatible here, and it is the following: whenever you take two elements in your atlas, then the change of coordinates, which is just the composition of these local homomorphisms with automatic restriction to the nice sets where they are well defined. It's a pain to work with this one, but it's hidden in this notation. So the composition of these local homomorphisms, it should be a smooth map of Rn, and that's what this says. So it really corresponds to what you see in mathematics. And once we have these solid instances, we can start talking about smooth functions on the sphere or from the sphere to another manifold. And that's what I would like to describe now. So we have smooth function. Here is an example of a smooth function. I will just look at the inclusion of the sphere. The n-dimensional sphere is included in Rn+1. So here is just the inclusion. And now I want to say that the inclusion is a smooth map. So saying that the inclusion is a smooth map, in Yuri's talk, you saw that smooth functions are called times cont diff, sometimes continuously differentiable functions. Here you are between manifolds, so you have an additional m. M here stands for manifolds. So I want to say that this inclusion map is C infinity. The infinity here stands for C infinity. And then I need to say with respect to which smooth structure, so which smooth model with corners I'm looking at in the source and in the target. And it's really necessary to say it explicitly because, for instance, you could think of a complex manifold that you would think of also as a real manifold. And then if you want to say that a function is real smooth or complex smooth, you need a way to say this. So you need to specify which kind of smoothness you're looking at. And here it's specified with this saying that here it's really the usual smooth structure on the model space Rn, and here it's the usual smooth structure on the model space Rn+1. So this lemma say that the function, the inclusion, is smooth from the sphere of radius n to the Euclidean space Rn+1. And the proof will start like that. So you don't want to see how the definition is really set up. It's set up in some way to get good definitional behavior, but here you just rewrite something which is equivalent. And then you split, and then you see that you have two parts. You need to prove that the inclusion is continuous. And okay, this we already know, so this you can prove. And then, of course, saying that the map is smooth between manifolds, it's just you take a chart in the source space, a chart in the target space, and you want to see that when you compose everything, you get a smooth map. And that's exactly what is here. You will take your inclusion map, you will compose it on one side with the chart at X, on the other side with the chart at Y, and you want the composition to be smooth. In the usual sense here, you can see that it's times cont diff and not times cont m diff. It's the usual sense, except that, of course, it can only be smooth on the domain because it's not defined everywhere. And the domain is this stuff here that you can see. Okay, the last bit here. It's a domain where it should be smooth. And okay, you have to check this, but since I've sorted the charts, it's impossible to prove this now. So let's just sorry this. And once you can speak of smooth functions between manifolds, okay, you can deduce things from the smoothness with the nice dot notation. If you have a smooth function, you can deduce that the function is continuous because you have a lemma saying that the smooth function is continuous, like that. And you can also deduce that the function is differentiable because you have a lemma saying that the smooth function is differentiable. And here again, it's differentiable between manifolds. So you have this M differentiable where M stands for manifold. And if I put my mouse here, you can see that you have a lot of type classes in the definition of M differentiable, but you don't need to think too much about them when you want to use the library. So, and how do you deduce the differentiability from the smoothness? Of course, if your function is infinity, then it's differentiable. And since this theorem is stated for any smoothness, you need to say that, in fact, the degree of smoothness that you had here, which is infinity, was larger than 1, which is what this late top here says.
All those type classes had different inputs, didn't they? You've managed to make, we don't have like ring R, com ring R at the same time. They were all kind of distinct, like distinct subsets of the thing.
Yes,
That's
they
really
have
good.
to be. They have to be distinct because all the time you included more data in your type class. For instance, a charted space is just speaking on the two spaces. But then when you move to the smooth manifold with corners, you have additionally the reference to the model with corners you're using. So you have more parameters, more type parameters in this definition than in the previous one. So you cannot have this one extend this one. Okay, it was just a remark for specialists. Okay, so we don't have a lot about smooth manifold, but we have smooth functions, and we also have tangent spaces and tangent bundles that I would just like to illustrate now. For instance, Lin, we have convinced Lin by cheating that the sphere was a smooth manifold. So if I take a point in the sphere Sn, and then I can look at a vector v in the tangent space at this point to the sphere, and again I have to specify which manifold with corner structure I'm talking about, because it could be a tangent space as a real vector space or as a complex vector space, depending on the setting. So here I have to specify it. And then if I have a point and a vector in the tangent space, then I have a point in the tangent bundle, which is just you put the two together, the point and the vector. Essentially, that's the definition of the tangent bundle, or maybe the definition of the tangent space is that it's just a fiber above P in the tangent bundle. Okay, so just like you would like to write things in mathematics. And now, the only non-trivial thing we already have about manifold in MATLIB is that the tangent map is a functor. So for instance, you have this inclusion map here, which was smooth, and then you can look at the tangent, at the derivative of this map, at the tangent map, which will be a map from the tangent bundle of the sphere to the tangent bundle of the Euclidean space. And the tangent bundle of the sphere, it has dimension 2n, and the model with corner is a product model with corner, and it should go to the tangent bundle of Rn plus 1, which would be a 2n plus 2 dimensional space with a model with corner, which is just a product model with corners. And of course, tangent map to a smooth map should be smooth. And that's what this example says. And here, there are no stories at all. It's a proof, it's a theorem in the library that the tangent map to a smooth map is still a smooth map. And in particular, what is implicit here that I'm not writing down is that when you have a smooth manifold, its tangent bundle is again a smooth manifold. If the manifold was infinity, it's again a infinity manifold, and for a different model space, which is just the product of the original model space and the original vector space. And this tangent map behaves nicely from a definitional point of view. Let me just give some example here. If I have a map, okay, I could have taken the inclusion from the sphere of dimension n to Rn plus 1, but I chose to change here and to take a map from the sphere of the sphere of dimension n to the sphere of dimension n squared. Why not? And then you take a point on the sphere and the tangent and the tangent vector at the sphere to the sphere at this point P. And then you can apply the derivative of your function at this point to this vector, but you could also apply the tangent map to your function at the pair PV and take the second component. And of course, it should be the same thing because it's a definition of the derivative of the tangent map. And things are set up so that this is true definitionally. So you can work like you would like to work when you write mathematics. either looking at pairs in the tangent bundle or at a vector in the tangent space and applying the map.
And so you don't even need to assume that F is smooth or whatever.
No, because if it's not smooth, the derivative will just be 0, and the tangent map at this point will also be 0, and it will be the same. You need to give a meaning to everything, even when it doesn't have a well-defined meaning. So you choose some junk value, and the junk value for non-differentiable map is that the derivative should be 0. It's a choice. If you prefer 37, why not? So, as I said, the library is really in its infancy, but it's already able to say things. You already have a language. And now I would just like to see what we can say with the language. So it was one of the exercises in a previous version. I wanted you to express the sphere evasion theorem. The sphere evasion theorem is a theorem that tells you that you can deform the sphere to exchange the inside of the sphere and the outside of the sphere while remaining immersed all the time. And we have enough language to say this in a pretty nice way. It will just be that you should have a map from the interval times the sphere to the space R3. The map should be smooth. And since I know how to define smooth maps on a manifold with boundary, it's not a problem to say this. And the model with corners for this smoothness in the source, it should be the product of what you have in dimension 1 and what you have in dimension 2. In the target space, it's just a standard model in dimension 3. So the map should be smooth, and it should be an immersion along the fibers. I mean, the derivative along the fiber should be everywhere injective, and this you can write because you can write the derivative from the sphere to R3 of your function, because we have derivative of functions between manifolds, and it's a linear map between some vector spaces. So asking that it's injective makes perfect sense. And then you want that this smooth path of immersion on the left at 0 is just the identity, and on the right at 1 it's just the antipodal map. And that's a pretty complete and nice statement of the sphere evasion theorem. Of course, since I've sorted the definition of the sphere above, it's not a complete statement of the sphere evasion theorem, but once we have the smooth structure of the sphere, it's really a complete statement of the theorem. And then there is a project by Patrick Massot to try to formalize the proof, but at least we are not too far away from formalizing the statement. And now I had a plan to discuss 3 design decisions in the libraries. And I don't know if it's too late and if you should go to exercises, or if I have the right to talk just a little bit about that.
I think you can continue talking.
Okay, fine. Let me talk about that. So I said that the design space to implement manifold is huge. I mean, you have a lot of possibilities, and it's not obvious which decision is the best. For instance, I talked about charts, which are local homomorphism defined from an open subset of your manifold to an open subset of the model space. But what is that precisely when you want to formalize it? You have at least 3 possibilities. It could be a map defined on a subtype. So a subtype called f.source, which would be an open subset of E depending on the local homeom you're looking at. So then f of x would only make sense if x were an element of this subtype and not an element of your original space. Another possible design choice would be to take a map defined on the whole space E, but it would not take the values in the target space F. It would take values in an external space called option F, which is F and adjunct value, which is different from all the elements of F. And this map F on the source, which would be an open subset of E, it would be a nice map. It would take values in F. And outside of the source, well, the points would just be mapped to junk. That's another possible choice. And you have a third choice, which is maybe a little bit more weird. It would be to take a map defined on the whole space E and taking values in the space F. And just it means that outside of the source, it would take some values and you just wouldn't care at all about the values it takes outside of the source. So it's just like the division by zero issue that you have heard before in the week. I hope so. Division by zero, you could say, okay, it's only defined for points different from zero, and it would correspond to choice one. Or division by zero could be defined for everyone, but when you divide by zero, you get a junk value which is not in the space. It could correspond to choice two. Or division by zero, you could divide by zero, and then you would get some junk value when you divide by zero, and it would correspond to 0.3. And there are issues with the three choices. For instance, with one, when you play with manifolds, you keep intersecting chart domains because you have several charts and you want to have points in the intersection of the domains. And a big issue here is that the subtype corresponding to the intersection of U and V, it's not the same as the subtype corresponding to the intersection of V and U. It's the same, but not for Lin's kernel. You have to convince it that it's the same. And so it means that it makes formalization really painful for no good mathematical reasons. With two, you have an issue that if the functions are allowed to take a junk value outside of your target space, it means that when you speak of smooth functions and you want manifold, the functions, they would not only go into target space, but in option of the target space. So you will need to define smooth functions from option E to option F. And essentially all notions, you would need to extend them to option stuff. And so that's also extremely painful.
That's what they invented monads for, right?
Yeah, but monad, you still need to define stuff. And monad cannot hide, if you just want to apply a function, option is fine. But if you want to discuss the smoothness of a function, so you have to take the values not just at just one point, but in a neighborhood, and monads cannot play well with that. Monad is good to compose operations, but not to really prove theorems. Well, that's my opinion. And then what's the issue with three? Well, three works perfectly well, just like a division by zero works perfectly well, except it makes mathematicians unhappy or uneasy. And that's also a problem, but in my opinion, it's not too bad because mathematicians can change or learn or adapt or whatever. So I picked three. And one real issue is that three is not equivalent to one or two. I mean, the 3 points of view are not equivalent because when one of the spaces is empty and the other one is not, it's impossible to extend the map outside of the source. So it's not equivalent to the other points of view, but it's really the most convenient, in my opinion. So when you will play below with the exercises, you will see that the definition is this one, the third one, and so I wanted to warn you with this. Okay, another design decision is about tangent vectors. And now when you take books, you have dozens of equivalent definitions of a tangent vector for, say, for real finite dimensional manifold with a boundary modeled on a vector space. And the nicest, in my opinion, geometric description of tangent vectors is you draw a curve on your manifold, and you say that two curves are equivalent if the derivative at zero is the same, which you can read in some charts or any chart is the same. So that's really the geometric definition that gives a lot of intuition. Then you have a completely non-geometric and non-intuitive definition, which is just a derivation, a map on the space of infinity function that satisfies the same axioms as the derivative. And then you have the physicist point of view, and the physicist says, okay, I don't know what a manifold is, but I know how to compute tangent vectors in charts. And the mathematician's interpretation would be an equivalence class of a pairs EV, where E is a chart, and V is the vector, and you would say that two pairs like that are equivalent if when you compose the charts and apply them to V, you get V prime. And then, I don't know, you have maybe a lot of other definitions. And you could try to make a library with any of these choices. For instance, with choice one. Well, choice one, in fact, the pictures are pretty, but when you go down to the definition, it's really the same thing as a third point of view. So, and since you don't explain things with pictures to the computer, the first point of view is in fact more misleading than anything else. So let's forget about it. The second point of view, this derivation, people who do algebraic geometry like it a lot. But if you want to show that it's really a local notion, you need partition of unity, say. And also, this point of view does not work in finite smoothness. If you have manifold with finite smoothness, you have derivations which are not tangent vectors in the usual sense. And in complex manifolds, where everything is analytic, you don't have partition of unity. So you're also a little bit in trouble to make this nicely. The third point of view, seems nice, no problem with definitions, no problem. It's maybe a little bit heavy to formalize, because when I define these equivalent classes, I need to define a vector space, which is a space of equivalent spaces. Of course, it's isomorphic to any one of the tangent space. If you just take one chart, you get one space, and all the other ones will be equivalent to exactly one vector in the first chart. So you can of course put a vector space structure on this space of equivalent classes just by picking the addition in one of the vector spaces, and you can put a topology by picking it in one of the spaces and checking that it's compatible with equivalence and so on. So it's a lot of work, but it can be done. And the difficulty is if you do that and you work with a tangent space to a vector space, this tangent space will not be definitionally equal to the vector space, which you would like, because you would like to think that the tangent space to a vector space is just itself. And you want Lean to help you with this point of view. And so I went for a fourth point of view, which is just use it for the tangent space. I will just, at each point X, I will pick some favorite chart, EX, and we'll define the tangent space at X to be just the vector space. That's the end of the definition. And of course, I think of this vector space to correspond to the vector space in the chart EX at this point. And when you have this point of view, you can define derivatives of map. For instance, the derivative of a function at a point X, it will be just the derivative that you read in the charts precisely at the point X and at the point f of X. It's completely equivalent to the third point of view, except that instead of taking all the equivalence classes, I say, okay, every guy in the equivalence class, it's just equivalent to one guy in my in the class where the chart is just my favorite chart. So why bother taking all the other equivalent classes and not just take the first one? Not just take the vector corresponding to this preferred chart EX. So from the mathematical point of view, it's exactly equivalent to the third point of view, except that you have less constructions to make. And of course, it makes mathematicians unhappy or uneasy, a little bit like before.
This definition is a scandal.
This definition is a scandal. I agree with that. But I hope I didn't start with that. I started with showing off how well it works. I mean, you can talk about tangent spaces, you can talk about the tangent map derivative, and you don't need to know how this is built under the hood.
That's very
So
important.
can you prove that the tangent map is continuous? I mean, are there problems with continuity? These E's won't vary smoothly, right?
Yes, yeah. The tangent map is smooth, and it's even C infinity. Here it's the theorem that said that the tangent map to a smooth map is smooth. So of course, with this point of view, when the tangent model will just be the direct product, say. But of course, the different tangent spaces will need to be glued in a clever way to respect the topology of the manifold. And not the
Right, but if you can do it, it must be fine. What's Patrick complaining about? I mean, this is just an implementation issue. If you can
it's
prove that the
really
tangent
an
map is
implementation detail. And in fact, you should never, ever unfold the definition of the tangent bundle. And you should always work by functoriality, saying that you have smooth map, and so the derivatives are smooth, and that's it. Never come back to the definition of the tangent space in the same way that when you do usual mathematics, you never come back to the definition of the tangent space. And you never say, I pick the equivalent class of jumps of curves or derivation or whatever. You never unfold the definition.
This is real world mathematics. I mean, we are entering like a bit sophisticated mathematics, and when we do it in the real world, we never ever unfold definitions.
Yes, absolutely. And here you should never ever unfold the definition either. It's
Is
really
it already marked as
like
irreducible?
mathematics. Sorry?
Is it already marked as irreducible in the MATLAB?
No, it's not marked as irreducible for a good reason, that sometimes I want to cheat. For instance, if I have two functions, g and f, that are inverse to each other, and I would like to say that the derivative of g composed with the derivative of f applied to a vector v, it's exactly v. And if you mark things as irreducible, Lin will tell you, okay, the first v, it lives in the tangent space at x, and the other v, it lives at the tangent space at g of f of x. But if you know that this is the same point, you know that the tangent spaces are the same, so you would like to be able to say that the vectors are equal. It's convenient.
Sure.
And since we are in some kind of untyped setting with this, Lin is perfectly happy with a statement like that.
There was an example before with having difficulty with transportive structure when you have definitions like this that use choice.
Yes.
Do you have you attempted to do any proofs of like this tangent bundle can be transported across an isomorphism of a certain kind?
Okay, I've not done that, but it's essentially trivial because, well, we have diffeomorphisms, and diffeomorphisms, we know that they are smooth. So their derivatives will be also smooth, and the derivatives will go from the tangent space of the first manifold to the tangent space of the second manifold. And the tangent map of the inverse will be inverse of the first tangent map by functoriality. And so you know that
you prove they compose.
Sorry?
Composition you have.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
We have the proof that it's functorial, so you have composition.
Right.
That's really the basic piece you need.
Yeah, then it drops out.
Yeah. So last design issue is that I really want to speak about manifold with boundary, because that's important in real world mathematics. And now, if you open a book and you look at what a smooth function is in a manifold with boundary, first they define a smooth function in the half space. And the function is smooth in the half space in the books if it extends a little bit beyond the boundary to a smooth function. So once you have extended it, you know what a smooth function is, because usually smooth functions are defined on open subsets of vector spaces. So that's what you have if you extend a little bit. So of course, what you should do and that you never do is that when you define the derivative of a function, you should check that it does not depend on the choice of the extension. Of course, it's obvious, so you don't do it. And then when you want to define the tangent bundle to a manifold with boundary, what you should do is extend a little bit the manifold with boundary, a little bit beyond the boundary, and say, okay, no, I take the tangent bundle to the extended manifold, and then I restrict it to my original manifold with boundary. And then you should check that it does not depend on the extension you have chosen. And that's something that's really easy to do by hand waving. And that's something that could be a complete nightmare to formalize. I mean, what's the extension of a manifold with boundary? Manifold with boundary some type. Would you need to construct another type, which would be in some extension, and then check that it does not depend on the extension? It doesn't seem to be a practical way if you want to formalize things. So instead, what you could do is try to define derivatives in non-open domains. For instance, define the derivative in the half space by saying that, okay, f of x minus f of y divided by x minus y tends to what you want. When x and y remain in your non-open domain, and that gives you a pretty good definition of derivative in a domain. And then if you go this way, you can talk of smooth functions in a domain, and you do everything without extending, and you're on much safer grounds than this kind of weird extension business. And what's funny that it means that if you want to talk about manifold with boundary, the first day you start defining derivatives, you should have this in mind, and you should start defining right from the start derivatives in domains. And luckily, it's what we've done in Mathlib. When we started defining derivatives, we already had this kind of application in mind. So right from the start, we define derivatives on domains, and so that's why we are fine on this point of view. And so we are always proving theorems for functions, for smooth functions in domains. But there's a difficulty here that if a domain is too small, the values of the function on the domain, when I say domain, I mean subset. I don't mean open subset. The values of the function on the domain, they don't have to prescribe uniquely the derivative of the function. For instance, if your domain is just a line in R2, then the derivative of the function in the transverse direction would not be prescribed by the values of f on this subset. So this f derivative within at would be some choice of the derivative, but it might behave very badly. The derivative of the sum might be different from the sum of derivatives because there is some choice involved. And of course, in hash spaces, this will not happen because you have enough direction to enforce the derivative. You have uniqueness of the derivative. So talking about derivative will only be reasonable if you have such nice domains. So in Mathlib, we have a predicate on domains called unique differential on, unique diff on, for sets in vector spaces. And when we define a manifold with boundaries, we require that the range of this embedding function should be a unique differentiability set. And that's really things that are specific, I think, to formalization that never show up in the books, because you don't need to bother with that kind of stuff in books because everything is obvious. When you want to formalize, you have to also take care of the obvious stuff. Okay, so I think I'm done with what I wanted to describe. And now I've given you some exercises.
I have a complaint in the chat first. So Antoine is complaining about paracompactness.
Yes, may I speak a little? I have
yeah, sure.
So I was just saying that the proper definition of say a smooth function on a subset of A of Rn would be a function which in the neighborhood of every point small a in A has a smooth extension.
Well, you know, sometimes in
paracompactness of Rn, this will be the same.
Yeah, but sometimes in dynamics, you meet functions that are smooth along a counter set and that do not admit extensions like that. So I have other applications in mind, and I know very well that it's important to be able to restrict to domains and not just require smooth extensions.
Yes. Can you repeat your?
Okay, in dynamics, sometimes we have functions that are defined everywhere. And you want to say that they are smooth along a Cantor set, and they're really smooth just along the Cantor set, and not and they don't extend nicely outside of the Cantor set.
So you mean that at every point of the Cantor set?
At every point of the Cantor set, you can define the derivative along the Cantor set, and which gives you a new function, and iterated derivatives along the Cantor set, and these work nicely. But they don't play well with derivatives with the values of the function outside of the Cantor set.
But that's not really my complaint. My complaint was that your definition of a smooth function is not local. I mean, there should be shift theory in differential geometry.
No, my definition of smooth function is local. It is, well, if you're in a domain, it's local in the domain. There is no problem about that. It has to be local, of course.
Okay.
If you want, you can go check the definition.
Yeah, okay.
How it's
There was a
defined.
conscious decision to avoid sheaves, right?
But that's an unreasonable decision.
No, because
You're more
the
algebraic.
differential
Conscious-
geometry are a joke. I mean, it's a kind of a fantasy by algebraic geometry people, but actually sheaves are not good enough in this context.
Antoine, they didn't even define derivations properly. I mean, they just live in some different world.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a cultural gap, for sure. But I think differential geometers are more on my side.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Before we start,
yes.
there's errors in my manifolds. Is that for everyone? There's an error on line 391. Do you have an error? I can't see the bottom of your screen.
Sorry,
I have 2 errors.
on which line?
391. I have an invalid definition.
Yeah.
And then it's tile class and 4.
Yes, it's because I didn't prepare my.
It's only a name class.
Okay. This error is fixed. Fine. You will. Okay, that's another exercise. You will need to fix it just by yourself because I will not push this one. You will not You will not need to git pull, and I'm not expecting you to get there. You know. Okay, so now you have a bunch of exercises. It starts nicely and then it becomes harder. And I have just one advice for you is that SIMP is really necessary in this business. SIMP is really going to clean up the mess for you because definitions are complicated and you have tons of definitions over definitions over definitions, and you don't need to know all these definitions because SIMP will clean them for you. Okay.